Let's talk title. We often say that a property owner holds a bundle of rights to the property. This bundle includes rights such as the right to possess the property, to use the property, to lease the property to another person, and to sell the property. Title refers to ownership of this bundle of rights. A property owner can separate the rights in the bundle. An owner can rent the right to use the property by leasing to a tenant. A landowner can sell the development rights for his property and place the property into conservation. With the lease, the owner expects the conveyance will be temporary. With the conservation, the owner hopes it will be permanent. In both instances, the owner keeps all the other rights in the bundle, even though the owner has given away one right. With so many potential rights holders in real property, we need a way to identify owners and find out whether a property owner has conveyed any of the rights in his bundle to anyone else. Our title system is the way we keep track of these property interests. Imagine I took a watch off my wrist, held it out to you, and offered to sell it to you for $50. If you were interested in buying the watch, how would you know I owned it? What could I show you to prove I had the right to sell the watch? If I show you a receipt from a store, how would you know that receipt was for the particular watch I was dangling in front of you? How would you know the receipt was even real if it came from a store you didn't know? In the case of a watch, you might let the whole ownership question slide. I have the watch. You can take the watch from me right now in exchange for $50. You can examine the watch closely and judge its quality directly. The watch is portable and it's inexpensive. Once we part company, you'll get to keep the watch. Given all these circumstances, you might overlook ownership concerns and just take me up on my offer. That doesn't work for real property. Real property is expensive. So expensive, you'll probably have to borrow money from a lender to buy it. And you can't move real property. If you buy a house, you want to know that no one is going to unlock the door someday, walk in, look at you, and demand, "What are you doing in my house?" Your lender wants to make sure this surprise doesn't happen too. The lender lends you money because it believes you are buying the property from the owner and that you will own the property after closing. Both lender and buyer want proof that the seller who shows up at closing actually has the legal right to sell the property. This is where the ideas of title and marketable title come in. We designed our title system to make sure that everyone involved, buyers, lenders, and the world at large, can easily identify the owner of a property and identify anyone other than the owner who holds a significant interest in the property. In the United States, we keep all the records of conveyances involving real property in local land record offices. The local officials who maintain these records go by different names: town clerks, county recorders, county clerks. But they all serve the same function. They record and document transactions that affect title to real property located in their area, be it town, county, or district. Warranty deeds, quitclaim deeds, mortgage deeds, liens, tax delinquencies, zoning permits, land use permits, anything that might affect the bundle of rights that make up the title to a piece of real property can be recorded in the land records. Because each land record office maintains records for properties located within a particular geographic boundary, a town, a county, a region, the land records affecting title to a particular property are located mostly in a single office. A person who wants to know who owns a particular property can find out who by visiting a single land records office. Now, we keep some records that affect title elsewhere. For example, we sometimes store state regulatory permits in a state agency's office. Even in that case, someone usually records a brief notice in the land records, stating that relevant records exist somewhere else. This system of one-stop shopping helps keep title to real property easily discoverable. The courts support the title system. In resolving disputes about ownership of real property, courts presume the record owner identified in the land records is the legal owner of a particular property. Anyone who wants to overcome that presumption must present strong evidence explaining why the presumption should be set aside. Because the legal system strongly favors the rights of those with recorded interests, a buyer wants to make sure that the land records identify the seller as the owner before the closing occurs. Specifically, the buyer wants to know the seller can convey marketable title. Marketable title. The exact definition of marketable title varies by state, and the local definition always controls the meaning. But the central idea is this: marketable title exists if the land records show that the seller owns the property, and that the seller can convey the property free of any significant claims, encumbrances, or liens by third parties. Marketable title does not mean that a property is free of all claims, encumbrances, or liens. For example, many properties are subject to third-party interests that do not affect the marketability of title. A power company might have the right to run power lines across a section of property. A neighbor might have the right to draw water from a property well. A neighbor might have the right to cross or use a driveway to reach his own property. Interests like these usually do not affect the marketability of title because they don't unreasonably hinder the buyer's use of the property and would not prevent the buyer from selling the property later. The interests or claims we care about are claims that would prevent the buyer from selling the property later, or claims that do threaten the buyer's use of the land, that no reasonable buyer would accept the title with that claim hanging over it. One common claim that would render title unmarketable is a mortgage. If the seller owes money to a lender, and the lender holds a mortgage deed on the property, most buyers will not accept title unless the seller pays off the loan at closing, and the lender discharges the mortgage. If the buyer takes title subject to the mortgage and the seller does not pay off the loan, then the lender could foreclose on the property and sell the house from under the buyer. Before the sale closes, the buyer is going to want the seller to prove that he paid the loan and that the lender will discharge the mortgage. The buyer's lender is also going to insist on proof that marketable title exists. So, how do the buyer and lender know whether marketable title exists? Someone, usually a lawyer, a paralegal, or a title examiner, will search the land records for them to find out whether the seller holds title and whether the records contain any third-party claims against the property. The title searcher will look for any document in the land records that affect title to the property: deeds, liens, easements, mortgages, leases, anything. State law usually requires this title search to cover some specified period, for example, the last 40 years. Title examiners don't just thumb through the land records hoping to stumble across something relevant to the property. The records clerk indexes all the land records, either by the names of the people granting and receiving property interests or by the property itself. This indexing is the key to the title examiner's search. Let's imagine that Wilbur lives in a state that indexes land records by the names of grantors and grantees. Wilbur is selling his house to Olivia, and Olivia asks Jane to search Wilbur's title. Jane begins by searching the index for every record that involves Wilbur. If Wilbur has a mortgage, Jane makes a note of the mortgage. If the town recorded a tax delinquency notice because Wilbur didn't pay his property taxes, Jane makes a note of the delinquency. She does this for every record involving Wilbur. These items will affect the marketability of Wilbur's title, and Wilbur will have to resolve them at or before closing. Then, Jane starts looking at the prior owners. By looking at the deed that gave Wilbur title, Jane learns that Wilbur bought the property from Eileen. Jane then searches the records for everything involving Eileen. Jane learns that Eileen bought the property from Heinrich, and Jane searches the records for Heinrich, and so on, until Jane has gone back through the records for the required period, looking for any title impairments and noting each person who sold and bought the property. As she works, Jane learns that Monty sold the property to Constance. Constance sold to Heinrich. Heinrich sold to Eileen, and Eileen sold to Wilbur. We call this trail of records, linking buyer to buyer to buyer, the chain of title. If the chain of title is unbroken, if each seller properly conveys title to the next buyer, and the records show no evidence that a third party holds a significant unresolved claim on the property, then we consider the title marketable. As I said earlier, the presence of a live claim in the record, like an undischarged mortgage or a tax lien, can make a title unmarketable. But absences in the land records can affect marketability as well. For example, Wilbur would have a title problem if Jane found that Monty sold to Constance, Constance sold to Heinrich, Philip sold to Eileen, and Eileen sold to Wilbur. What happened between Heinrich and Philip? How did Philip acquire the title Heinrich held? If the record does not explain this jump from Heinrich to Philip, then Wilbur has a problem with his title. He has a cloud on his title. A cloud on title is anything that casts doubt about a seller's title. If a cloud on the title exists, the seller must clear up the issue before the sale can close. In Wilbur's case, he must find the missing link connecting Heinrich and Philip. Maybe Philip forgot to record the deed from Heinrich to Philip. To close, Wilbur or his attorney will have to find the missing deed, record it in the land records, and create an unbroken chain of title. Title abstracts and title opinions. After a title search, the title examiner provides a report on title to the buyer. This report might be an abstract of title, which is a summary of everything the examiner found in the land records affecting title. All the transfers, conveyances, legal proceedings, and other facts showing continuity of ownership and documenting any facts that might impair title. An attorney might also issue an opinion of title, which provides a legal opinion on whether the title is marketable, based on all the records described in a title's abstract. The attorney's title opinion is not a guarantee of title. It is just the attorney's judgment about whether marketable title exists, based on the evidence in the land records. An attorney giving a title opinion does not act as a guarantor or insurer of title. Title insurance. For that particular service, a buyer can purchase title insurance. Title insurance protects against the risk of title defects not evident from the land records. If someone appears after closing claiming they have an interest in the buyer's property, the title insurer will pay the costs of defending the title, up to the amount of coverage stated in the title insurance policy. Title insurers usually issue title policies for buyers and lenders. For buyers, the title insurer defends claims that threaten the buyer's title to the property or impair any of the rights in the buyer's bundle of rights. For lenders, the title insurer defends claims that might affect the lender's mortgage, like the claims of other lenders. Title insurance, like most insurance, protects buyers and lenders against risk. In this case, the risk that a stranger will appear after the sale claiming an interest in the property. Even if the title examiner searches the land records well and the attorney's title opinion is sound, potential claims not clear from the record may still exist. Title insurance provides buyer and lender peace of mind that if such a claim appears, the title insurer will pay to defend the title. Although our title system may seem complicated, it works quite well because it is self-correcting. Every buyer knows her property purchase will only be as secure as her title, so the buyer and her lender check title carefully before closing. If they find a title defect, they insist that the seller fix the defect before closing. Because the seller's primary duty under a purchase contract is to convey a marketable title, the seller usually moves quickly to fix any defect found. If the seller can't cure the defect, then the buyer will walk away from the deal. Every time a sale occurs, the new buyer re-examines the title and the new title examiner searches the record. With so many motivated eyes looking at the title record, title defects do not last in the record for long. With a bit of luck and a lot of title searching, a marketable title will always and ever shine down, clear and unclouded on the closing table.